humorist, essayist, entrepreneur, publisher, and lecturer, also known as Mark Twain. Mark Twain, whose real name was Samuel Langhorne Clemens. He was born at Florida, United States in November 30, 1835. He has his own family with 4 children and his spouse Olivia Clemens. Twain is one of the greatest American writers because of his humor and social commentary. He was credited as revolutionizing American literature by vernacular speech and regional dialects into his writing. Twain's writings used to critique social norms and injustice, particularly to race, class, and politics. He works widely during his time and continued to celebrate it in the world. He renowned public speaking and lecturer. His performances drew a large crowds. Clemens involved in various humanitarian causes, including advocating for the rights of marginalized groups such as African literature and indigenous people. Clemens was influenced by a variety of factors throughout his life that shaped his writing and worldview. His childhood experiences in the Mississippi River town of Hannibal provided the inspiration for many of his works, including The Adventures of Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. He influenced by the works of authors such as Charles Dickens, Jonathan Swift, and William Shakespeare. He also inspires oral storytelling traditions of America. He lived through a significant social and political change in America, including the Civil War and Reconstructions. Clemens, influenced by his observations of nature and society, he used it to critique social norms and injustice, including his travels, financial struggles, and family life.
An imaginative and mischievous boy named Tom Sawyer lives with his Aunt Polly and his half-brother Sid in the Mississippi River town of St. Petersburg, Missouri. After playing hooky from school on Friday and dirtying his clothes in a fight, Tom is made to whitewash the fence as punishment on Saturday. At first, Tom is disappointed by having to forfeit his day off. However, he soon cleverly persuades his friends to trade him small treasures for the privilege of doing his work. He trades these treasures for tickets given out in Sunday school for memorizing Bible verses and uses the tickets to claim a Bible as a prize. He loses much of his glory, however, when in response to a question to show off his knowledge, he incorrectly answers the first 2 disciples were David and Goliath. Tom falls in love with Becky Thatcher, a new girl in town, and persuades her to get engaged to him. The romance collapses when she learns that Tom has been engaged before to a girl named Amy Lawrence. Shortly after being shunned by Becky, Tom accompanies Huckleberry Finn, the son of the town drunk, to the graveyard at night to try out a cure for warts. At the graveyard, they witness the murder of young Dr. Robinson by the Native American half-breed Injun Joe. Scared, Tom and Huck run away and swear a blood oath not to tell anyone what they have seen. Injun Joe blames his companion, Muff Butter, a hapless drunk, for the crime. Butter is wrongfully arrested, and Tom's anxiety and guilt begin to grow. Tom, Huck, and Tom's friends, Joe Harper, run away to an island to become pirates. While frolicking around and enjoying their newfound freedom, the boys become aware that the community is sounding the river for their bodies. Tom sneaks back home one night to observe the commotion. After a brief moment of remorse at the suffering of his loved ones, Tom is struck by the idea of appearing at his funeral and surprising everyone. He persuades Joe and Huck to do the same. Their, reti- their return is met with great rejoicing, and they became the envy of admiration of all their friends. Back in school, Tom gets himself back in Becky's favor after he nobly accepts the blame for a book that she has ripped. Soon, Muff Potter's trial begins, and Tom, overcome by guilt, testifies against Injun Joe. Potter is acquitted, but Injun Joe flees the courtroom through a window. Summer arrives, and Tom and Huck go hunting for buried treasure in a haunted house. After venturing upstairs, they hear a noise below. Peering through the holes in the floor, they see Injun Joe enter the house disguised as a deaf and mute Spaniard. He and his companion, an unkempt man, plan to bury some stolen treasures of their own. From their hiding spot, Tom and Huck wriggle with delight at the prospect of digging it up. By an amazing coincidence, Injun Joe and his partner find a pair of bags of gold themselves. When they see Tom and Huck's tools, they become suspicious that someone is sharing their hiding place and carry the gold off instead of burying it. Huck begins to shadow Injun Joe every night, watching for an opportunity to nab the gold. Meanwhile, Tom goes on a picnic to McDougal's cave with Becky and their classmates. That same night, Huck sees Injun Joe and his partner making off with a box. He follows and overhears their plans to attack the widow Douglas, a kind resident of St. Petersburg. By running to fetch help, Huck forestalls the violence and becomes an anonymous hero. Tom and Becky get lost in the cave, and their absence is not discovered until the following morning. The men of the town begin to search for them, but to no avail. Tom and Becky run out of wood and candles and begin to weaken. The horror of the situation increases when Tom, looking for a way out of the cave, happens upon Injun Joe, who is using the cave as a hideout. Eventually, just as the researchers are giving up, Tom finds a way out. The town celebrates, and Becky's father, Judge Thatcher, locks up the cave. Injun Joe, trapped inside, starves to death. A week later, Tom takes Huck to the cave and they find the box of gold, the proceeds of which are invested for them. The widow Douglas adopts Huck, and when Huck attempts to escape civilized life, Tom promises him that if he returns to the widow, he can join Tom's robber band. Reluctantly, Huck agrees. And that's the end of the story of the adventures of Tom Sawyer.
Now we're going to talk about the analysis of the adventures of Tom Sawyer. So, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer is a famous book by Mark Twain or Samuel Clemens about a boy named Tom Sawyer, of course, who has many exciting adventures in a made-up town called St. Petersburg. So the story is set in the past around 1800s, and Tom's adventures help us think about things like being kids, having friends, knowing what's right from wrong, and feeling free to be yourself. So in the story, the Mississippi River is very important because it represents freedom and fun for Tom and his friend Huckleberry or Huckleberry Finn, or we also call as Huck. So Tom is a lively and creative boy who loves having fun, but he also cares about doing what's right and staying loyal to his friends. Throughout the story, Tom learns about growing up and figuring out what's important to him, or who's important to him, or things that he should really prioritize. So the book also shows us what life was like in a small town back then. So it teaches us some rules and customs of the time. So Twain, the writer himself, uses humor and clever writing to talk about serious topics like school, religion, and justice. Overall, The Adventure of Tom Sawyer is a timeless story that teaches us about growing up and being true to ourselves. So Twain's great storytelling and interesting characters make it a book that all people of all ages can enjoy. And that's it for the analysis.
The story started by the protagonist named Huck. Huck is uneducated, abandoned, and immature. He had an irresponsible father, Bob Finn. Their hobbies are doing things that cause trouble. Huck had a gang with Tom Sawyer. Huck was held under the care of widow Douglas, who taught him a lot of things that he didn't know and tried to civilize him. It was a complete different environment for him. He had received a cash that catches his father's attention and forces him to give him some money to buy alcoholic drinks. Huck was too reluctant to give all he had to his father. Eventually, his father kidnapped him and brought him in the woods to live. He experienced abuse and trauma living with his father that led him to escape. He had a plan and he made a scene where he committed suicide, or he acted that he murdered himself. And his father and friends mourned for his death, thinking that he's actually dead. He left and found a bonfire that led him to Jim. Jim is a runaway slave of Miss Watson, widow Douglas' sister. Jim ran away because he is going to be sought out by Miss Watson. He cared and think for his family. He is afraid to be left alone and is afraid to be left behind. They decided to go down to the Mississippi River to obtain freedom. They traveled with a raft. Along the way, they found a clothing house to get some stock, and surprisingly, they found a dead body. But Jim did not let Huck look at it. Along the way, they found two men running and asking for help. It was the Duke and the King. Both were fraud. They brought Huck to their scheme to fool people just to earn money. They saw flyers with Jim's photo on it, with a reward of $400. Officers are looking for him because it is believed that he was a running away slave. And there is a myth that he was responsible for Huck's death. But Huck never told the officer about Jim because he knows the situation of Jim. The Duke and the King fooled people in town. They had a show. And when the time they know that a member of a Wilkes family had died, they disguised themselves as the brothers of the dead person because of the huge money left in the last will testament. Huck was in the dilemma whether he will help these people to get the money or try to show their real identity and scheme. Eventually, he did, and these two fraud got exposed their real identity and they run away. Jim was captured because the king told about told the officer about him. The Duke and the King had fight because of the money reward. Huck was on a quest to free Jim. He went to the place of the man who captured Jim. That turns out it was Tom's family. Tom is Huck's friend. Mrs. Phelps assumed that Huck was Tom Sawyer, her nephew. He took him under her care, and eventually the real Tom Sawyer and Huck had met. And the real Tom disguised himself as Sid, his younger brother. Later on, Aunt Polly exposed their scheme and revealed their true identity. Huck told Tom about his plan to free Jim. They went through all the planning and they finally freed Jim and ran away. Unfortunately, Tom was shot by a gun along the way because the farmers and Mr. Phelps noticed. However, they finally freed Jim. They took back Tom to their Phelps residence. Jim was recaptured, but Tom told Aunt Polly that Jim was freed by Miss Watson a long time ago. However, he never told anyone about it because he wants to have more adventure and travel with Tom and Jim. Jim was all free. Jim told Huck about the man they found dead during their travel in the Mississippi River and when they found a floating house. Jim told Huck that it was actually his father, Pop Finn. Huck was completely shocked. Jim was like a bird who was completely free. And Huck, on the other hand, was also free, and he continued his adventure to the west. And that is the adventure of the Huckleberry Finn. Here are my analysis, and I'll try to share the themes that I found in the story of the adventure of Huckleberry Finn. So, the adventure of Huckleberry Finn was actually a sequel of the story of the adventure of Tom Sawyer. These two were a masterpiece of a renowned artist, Samuel Clemens, or also known as Mark Twain. So in the story of adventure, the adventure of Huckleberry Finn, there are actually two characters that share the same story, but in different contexts. These two characters were Huck and Jim. Huck was an abandoned child that eventually went under the care of Widow Douglas, while on the other hand, Jim was a slave. Huck really was sold in toxicity. He was physically and emotionally abused by his father, and he always dreamed to be free. So right after that, he was being abused by his father. Widow Douglas took him under her care, but then he still feel that he wasn't free at all. Like Widow Douglas really wanted to insist to Huck to be someone that Mrs. Douglas dreamed him to be. That's why he thought everything that Huck didn't know, while Huck feel like he was already sold and he cannot be himself. So he tried many ways to escape the place and to be free. And the same goes with Jim. He was enslaved man for a very long time. Because during the time in the story of the adventure of Huckleberry Finn, the black people are considered as low class and they are just for enslaved men. So most of them are slaves. So Jim, together with his family, were slaves at the time of the story, and the story really shows the theme of racism because the people there will use the nth word, which is completely wrong and prohibited in today's society. So, with that, the story they were being, sold in toxicity where they cannot be themselves and where they cannot attain freedom or obtain freedom. So, in this journey, in the story of Huckleberry Finn, it really showcased that the nature of a person whenever we feel like we are being capsuled with toxic capsule into a place wherein we cannot be ourselves, we cannot be happy with what we are doing, we tend to make ways to have that freedom. So these characters, they really did a lot of things for them to escape the toxicity. So Hawk really laughed and he even acted like he murdered himself just to, you know, to to escape from his father. And on the other hand, Jim became a runaway slave just to escape enslavement from Miss Watson. And it really shows us that in reality, like whenever we feel that kind of feeling of being manipulated, we tend to resist and find ways of for us not to be manipulated by someone else. So these two really symbolizes the true nature of a human, that we dream of freedom. Next is that in the story, the narrator of the story itself was actually the protagonist and the main character itself, Huck. He narrated everything in the story. And when they went to travel, they have different purpose of freedom. Actually, Huck was too immature that time. Like he only cares for his own purpose, for his own self, for his own benefit, wherein he doesn't care about Jim. Jim. So the journey was all about himself, the freedom about himself, and he doesn't think about the freedom and the purpose or the reason of Jim why he wanted to be free. So along the way, when they experienced a lot of things, they encountered many people in many situations that really taught them lesson in life, wherein it made Hawk realize that the purpose of sympathy towards other people, because he felt that way when he actually realized and feel in depth the story of Jim. That is why he always makes way to help Jim, to help out him to get out from being jailed or being sold due to circumstances that really admits that he was guilty and deserves to be in jail. But then, when you're going to think of it, Jim's point of view was quite accurate of what he did in the story. Like when you feel being enslaved, when you feel being alone, when you feel you're being left behind in your family, you didn't know what happened to your family,
you feel you can do everything, you will do everything just to be free. So when that story, I truly salute Huck trying to help Jim to get out and to have that freedom. Because in the story, what makes us happy, like us people, what makes us happy is whenever we are free. We are free of doing our things, but also with this freedom, there's comes with limitations and boundaries. That is why we were being surrounded by people to guide us. Like in the story, they met different people, um, like Aunt Polly, the Mrs. Phelps, that really symbolizes guidance towards us. Like everything that is free has a limitation attached to it. That is why whenever they traveled and whenever they get into trouble, there are people who guide them, who help them to meet that limitation in their freedom. So with that, the story really showcased us the power of freedom and also the limitation that entails towards it. And then next was, I would want to emphasize the character of Pop Finn, the father of Finn. It really truly evident, like in the society, there are always people, parents who abandon their childs, who choose their freedom, and with that freedom, like he had that freedom with himself, and he got drunk all the time, and with that, without that limitation, without that people who guides him, who puts limitation towards him, he got used to it, that he pushes himself to abuse someone, like a son, Huck. He abused physically, emotionally, and even tried to kidnap his own son just to sake to have just for the sake of the money. So it was really sad, actually a sad reality, that there are all people outside that really that will do everything regardless it was illegal or somewhat that really go against the law, just to just to make sure that they will get whatever they want. It's truly it truly showcases a responsibility of a parent, that it leads to a very toxic family system, you know, whenever what the child encountered with their parents, they are putting trauma towards them, importing ideas that life is like this, life should be like this. And I really felt sorry for Huck that he experienced that kind of thing. And in the story, it was also the adventure of Huckleberry Finn also emphasizes the theme of maturation, wherein it's truly evident when Huck becomes mature, when he actually think of other people. Just like what I've said earlier, he thinks of Jim's life and purpose. He becomes empathic. He started to develop that maturity when he thinks beyond what he perceived in life to be. Like he become more sympathetic and really tried to help Jim to get out and go back to his family. It is really hard for you to, you know, when you are being surrounded by people that doesn't showcase any maturity, it's really hard for you to be matured you really have to go through all the experiences just to experience the thing, and really those experiences will teach you to become mature and to have wisdom in life, just like what happened to Hawk. So right after that, the story, when they encountered many people, like like the duke and the king, the duke and the king, that who were fraud. This was also give symbolism to people of foolishness, wherein we are like get easily fooled by fraud just because the way they act, the way they persuade us. But then all illegalities will come, all illegalities will not last because justice will prevail, just like what happened to the duke and the king. They got revealed themselves, their true identity, and got punished. They got punished, and it really taught Hawk that, you know, their principles in religion, to do things good, to do things bad. But Hawk chose to do things good, and he never let himself being carried to do things that is bad. So also the duke and the king really symbolizes also that people will perceive you, will tempt you to do something bad, but it is up to us, whenever it is up to us whether we choose to do that thing, or we choose to recalibrate our minds and redirect ourselves to the right path, which eventually Hawk chooses that right path. So also in the story, Tom Sawyer was one of the characters in the story The Adventure of Huckleberry Finn. Tom Sawyer plays the role of that in life we really have a friend who are willing to help us, even they will going to disguise themselves to become someone else, just to protect our own, just to protect you as a friend, as his friend. I really commend them, like whenever, like whatever they've gone through, like he was shot by a gun in the leg, he never minds it, but rather he keeps doing it just to sake to help his friend Huck and Jim. But then nobody's perfect. He actually kept an information about Jim, that Jim was freed a long time ago by Miss Watson's, but he never told anyone just because he wanted to have a travel more with Jim and Tom. But then in the story, it's really evident, like yeah, we want to indulge ourselves with so much comfort, and really wanted to pamper ourselves with freedom. You know, as a child, we always want to have fun and freedom. So after all, yeah, the fact that Tom kept Jim's freedom a secret has important implication for Huck's final decision to shrink civilized life for good and light out for the territory ahead of the rest, by which he means he wishes to head west. Huck's continued violence towards civilization suggests that even though the particular matter of Jim's freedom had been resolved, and greater immorality of society persists in the form of slavery and institutionalized racism, which people really advocate to eradicate racism in today's generation. But sad to say, in the story of the adventure of Huckleberry Finn, racism was really prevalent, and Jim was one of the victims of it. So after all, the story of Huckleberry Finn um, showcased us the importance of sympathy, importance of freedom, the importance of kindness, love, and value to everyone.